All right, let's keep in mind that in lesson 3, we are comparing quantities with percent, and we're using our formula quantity equals percent, so we use a percent sign to represent that, times our whole. And so what we've been doing is we've been writing those three things off to the side. The more we write down, the less hard we have to think. Quantity, whole, doesn't matter really what order these are in, and percent. Okay. Because if we can identify those three things, we can plug them into our formula. Then we don't have to worry about if we know if we're multiplying or dividing, right? We just do what our formula tells us. So there are 750 students in the 7th grade class and 625 in the 8th grade class. What percent is the 7th grade class of the 8th grade class? Of. Of is our hint. Remember, that means to multiply. That's our whole. Sorry, trying to write the word of here. Okay, of is our whole. So if it's out of, that's our whole. That's our total. So I want the 8th grade class for a whole. Well, there's 625 students in the 8th grade class. So I'm going to put 625 right here, which means by process elimination, there's 750 for the quantity. And now I plug in what I know into my equation. My quantity is 750 equals my percent. I don't know what it is, so I'm going to write my P times my whole is 625. And then I want you guys to notice that we're going to solve them the exact same way we've been. P times 625. I want P by itself, so I have to get rid of the 625. Since it's multiplying, we undo multiplying with dividing. Whatever we do one side of the equal sign, we do to the other. 625 divided by 625 is 1P. And you grab your calculator and type it in order. 750 divided by 625. And I think we get 1.2. Now, always make sure you're answering the question being asked, and it says, what percent is that? This isn't a percent, this is a decimal. So to change decimal to percent, we move the decimal point over 2 times and add the percent sign. So we can say that if it asks what percent of this is the 7th grade class, should have marked that down there. Remember, is our quantity, right? What percent is the 7th grade class of the 8th grade class? Well, it's 120% of the 8th grade class. Now, make sure your answers make sense, because what class has more kids in it? 7th or 8th? Well, that's easy, right? The 7th grade does, I mean, right? 750 is more than 625. So it should be more than 100%. Think of that 125 example we did to start, right? If it's more than what you got, more than the total, it should be more than 100%. So the principal is going to have to increase the number of 8th grade teachers if the 7th grade enrollment exceeds 110% of the current 8th grade enrollment. Will she need to increase the number of teachers, and explain your reasoning? Well, the threshold here is 110. Is the next year's 8th grade class going to have more than 110% of this year's? Yes. They have, oops, spell correctly, they have 120% of the students. My sloppy writing here, right? In 8th grade. Well, yeah, the current 8th grade class. We'll just say in 8th grade right now. Okay, just in 8th grade. Okay, so this is, hey, percents can come in handy when you're making decisions about the future, okay? That's why you got to make sure you put them in the right spot and get the correct answer to tell your principal if they're going to have to hire more teachers. All right, couple more examples. At Kent Middle School, there are 104 students in the band, 80 students in the choir. What percent of the number of students in the choir let me get rid of my big weird percent sign here, right? So we know we're looking for percent of the number of students in the choir. Of the number of students in the choir. That, go back to that hint. That means students in the choir, that's your whole. Which means that the other one, the band, is going to be your quantity. Okay, so real quick, quantity, whole, percent. Okay, fill in. What percent of the number of students in choir is the number of students in the band? So there we go, right? Is goes with the band. So our quantity is 104, our whole is 80, and we don't know the percent. Fill things in so you don't divide it the wrong way, okay? Quantity is 104. We don't know the percent, but we know we're multiplying it by our whole, which is 80. And then guess what? We're going to solve it the exact same way we have been. Solving for p, got to get rid of 80 on that side. It's times 80, so we undo multiplying with dividing. Whatever we do to one side, we do to the other. 80 divided by 80 is 1p. You take 104 and you divide it by 80, and you get 1.3. Answer the question being asked. What percent? Not a percent, decimal. So I have to move it 2 times to the right and add a 0. So it's going to be 130% of the number of students. The choir is 130% of the students in the band. I'm sorry. What percent of the number of the students in the choir is the number of students in the band? So the band is 130% of the choir. I knew that didn't make sense when I said that. Okay. All right. Same thing. Quantity. And I'm really getting sloppy now because I'm trying to rush. I apologize. Quantity. Whole. Percent. Quantity. And I know it's like, why do I have to write all this out? I get it. And you won't have to forever, but until you get really comfortable with it, make things easier on you. Write things down. At Kent Middle School, breakfast costs $1.25, lunch costs $3.75. What percent of the cost of lunch is the cost of breakfast? So that of is thing, remember? Is, of. That, when it's hard to figure out what it is, go back to the hint I gave you. Of the cost of lunch. Of is whole. So lunch costs $3.75. Is the cost of breakfast. Well, is our quantity. It is our breakfast, $1.25. And once you get this point, write it all in. Quantity, $1.25 equals percent. We don't know. Times our whole, $3.75. Oh, look it, we're solving for percent. We got to get rid of 375. It's times 375, so we're going to divide. Whatever I do to one side, do to the other. Once it's set up, solving's the exact same thing every time. This ends up being 0.3333, right? Repeating. So what percent? Need to make this into a percent. I'm going to take my decimal point and I'm going to move over 2 times and get 33 approximately, I'm going to say. 33.3, 33 and a third percent. Okay. So what percent of the cost of lunch is the percent of breakfast? Or I'm sorry, is the cost of breakfast? About 33 and a third percent. It's only 30, it's about 33% of what that cost of lunch is. Okay. So with all of this, ladies and gentlemen, if you can just remember your formula, okay? And if you use the hints of and is to help you figure out those numbers, you'll be able to solve for the missing piece. In this case, it's been percent, but for any of the missing values.